Next on Wealth International News, a deadly tragedy off the coast of Hong Kong as two ferries collide. At Paris Fashion Week, buyers from Beijing target lesser-known brands. And the latest water sport is part jet ski, part bird.
This is Wealth International News with Emmy Award-winning news anchor Graham Ledger.
Good day. Tragedy on a day of celebration in Hong Kong. A ferry boat with dozens of people on board collided with another ferry. The ship quickly began taking on water. At least 36 passengers were killed during the calamity. Sarah Charlton reports people on the ferry were taking that cruise to watch fireworks in honor of China's National Day.
The scene of a maritime disaster in Hong Kong, where at least 36 people died and dozens were injured when a ferry collided with another boat and sank. Carrying more than 120 passengers, the ferry belonging to the Hong Kong Electric Company was taking staff and their families to watch a fireworks display. It collided with another ferry heading for Lama Island and quickly began sinking. Survivors said people were trapped on board as the ferry flooded. A major rescue operation was launched and more than 100 people sent to hospital. The authorities say a number of passengers are in a serious condition. The second ship made it safely back to port and several passengers and crew were treated for injuries. The recovery continued into the morning as the victims' bodies were taken to a Hong Kong mortuary. Local media reported that children were among the dead. The incident is one of the city's worst maritime disasters. An investigation has been launched into what went wrong.
In China, the National Day celebrations continue despite that deadly ferry tragedy. It's the 63rd anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. However, this year, Sarah Scheffer reports democracy protests in Hong Kong are making the celebrations somewhat tense.
Rows of flags stand at attention in Beijing as top political and military figures mark the 63rd anniversary of the formation of the People's Republic of China. President Hu Jintao and Premier Wen Jiabo attended a flower-laying ceremony at the Monument to the People's Heroes in Tiananmen Square. This will be the last ceremony for both Hu and Wen, as the Congress of the Communist Party is expected to appoint new leaders during their meeting on November 8th. In Hong Kong, a low-key flag-raising ceremony marked the anniversary. But pro-democracy legislator Leng Kwok-hung interrupted the ceremony's formal proceedings by shouting demands for universal suffrage and the release of political prisoners before being escorted off the premises. Police blocked about 60 demonstrators from the ceremony. A protest movement has developed in Hong Kong in the last few months against China's new leadership, human rights abuses, and a controversial Beijing education curriculum in local schools.
Also in Asia, in Japan, on Okinawa, there is pushback right now to the deployment of U.S. military aircraft on that island. Deborah Gambara looks at the protest against the Osprey.
In Okinawa, Japan, anger over a U.S. decision to base 12 controversial Osprey aircraft out of its Marine base there. Locals say they're concerned about the Osprey's safety record. A hybrid aircraft, it can take off like a helicopter while flying like a plane. Former Secretary of Defense Robert Gates flew in one on his final tour of Afghanistan, and it has been deployed all over the world. Reports of crashes in Morocco and Florida earlier this year have some Japanese concerned that they put neighboring communities at risk. 6 Osprey have already arrived at the Futanama base to begin replacing the Marines' 40-year-old helicopters.
To the Middle East now, and across the Muslim world, the anti-American protest continues to simmer. And in Pakistan, there is now a large bounty on the life of an American citizen. Deborah Gambara looks at the $200,000 reward.
The price on the head of the person behind an anti-Islam film has gone up.
I am announcing today that whoever cuts off the head of this blasphemer, I will reward him with $200,000 from my own pocket.
Ikramullah Shahidam, a former member of Parliament's reward, is the latest in a series of bounties placed on the head of the filmmaker. In Pakistan, outrage over the film, which mocks the Prophet Muhammad, has not subsided. Chanting "Jihad, Jihad," more than 10,000 people participated in a rally against the film on Monday.
To Europe now. In Spain, the Spanish government has finally a budget blueprint. However, many are predicting that Spain will still need a financial bailout. This as unemployment remains at 24%, and Joanna Partridge reports as the real estate industry has ground to a halt.
An idyllic Spanish resort, complete with swimming pool, golf course and a favourable climate. You'd think property seller Paul Williams would make sales easily.
The weather helps sell it more than anything. You know, probably that's what most people buy for is the 300 days of sunshine a year that Murcia has.
But nothing's been easy at Marmenor Resort or anywhere else on Spain's Mediterranean coast since the country's property bubble burst in 2007. Spain's banks lent heavily to real estate developers during the decade-long boom. When that ended, creditors were left with bad loans to house builders and unfinished apartment complexes. Many of the properties still stand empty. Around 10% of the 10,000 properties built in Polaris Resort are for sale after the banks repossessed them from the developers. Some see the chance to snap up a bargain, but getting a mortgage from Spain's struggling banks remains a problem.
In most cases, it's the banks that have that problem, and they have the tools to help put it right by lending to people.
Local governments have been accused of using funds from troubled lenders to bankroll huge construction projects. Fernando Vera, a member of the opposition Socialist Party, says the boom created other problems like unemployment.
There were 3 or 4 boom years, and now it will take decades to solve the problems left behind.
Murcia and 4 other regions have now asked for state aid. With Spain expected to seek a full bailout in the next few weeks, understanding what went wrong could be the key to putting it right. Joanna Partridge, Reuters.
In France, the new socialist president there has officially instituted a whopping 75% income tax rate. Many wealthy French are pledging to leave the country rather than pay that huge progressive tax. Meantime, in Germany, German taxpayers are getting weary of bailing out other countries. David Sincock looks at Germany's Eurosceptics.
Munich's world-famous Oktoberfest is an eagerly awaited opportunity for Germans to indulge in some of their favourite pastimes. This year's, the 179th, has opened with the customary razzmatazz and louder-than-usual protests about the beer prices. But with the euro crisis also in full swing, are Germans losing faith in the single currency and the whole European project? The best-selling Bild tabloid has condemned the bailouts for Greece and others, but generally takes a strongly pro-Europe editorial line. Deputy Editor-in-Chief Nicholas Blomer believes the debt crisis is moving up the agenda for his readers.
Interested in what's happening in the other countries because it's so interconnected by the euro, as we learn out of the Greek crisis. And so German people tend to ask more questions about the euro, about the European integration, and in a way a bit more skeptical because so much is going wrong.
Opinion polls tell conflicting stories. One earlier this month found nearly 2/3 of Germans think they'd be better off without the euro. But on the streets of the capital, Berlin, most seem to recognize the benefits of the single currency.
The whole idea of Europe is to stick together and to help each other out.
For the togetherness, I think it's important that Germany have to pay, yes.
Chancellor Angela Merkel, facing a re-election campaign in 2013, must strike a difficult balance. If Europe fails, she gets the blame. But more costly bailouts for other countries would also be hugely unpopular. Political scientist Konstantin Wörsing of Berlin's Humboldt University says there's little political capital to be made from any rise in Euroscepticism.
that anyone is going to benefit from it politically. I don't think there's any party that would have the courage or the ability, given the political situation in Germany, to bring sort of a very Eurosceptic agenda into the political arena and benefit from it electorally.
Germany's role as the driver and paymaster of European integration will come under the spotlight in next year's national elections. But the issue may not prove divisive enough to overturn Angela Merkel's centre-right coalition. David Sincock, Reuters.
In the United States, one day until the crucial debate between the presidential candidates, and the race for the White House is tight. Julie Noche looks at the president's pre-debate campaigning in the Silver State.
U.S. President Barack Obama and his opponent Mitt Romney have been doing something out of the ordinary lately, praising each other. In preparing for this week's presidential debate, both candidates have been complimenting each other's oratory skills. Obama told supporters in Nevada he wants to make sure to keep the presidential debate about key issues, not about fancy one-liners.
No, Governor Romney, he's a good debater. I'm just okay. But what I'm most concerned about is having a serious discussion about what we need to do to keep the country growing and restore security for hardworking Americans.
Obama will stay in Nevada, prepping until Wednesday's debate in Denver. Republican opponent Romney, whose home in Massachusetts, has also been practicing. Romney comes into the debate with poor poll figures after a series of gaffes in the past weeks.
And Republican presidential nominee Mitt Romney has flown from the East Coast to Colorado, site of Wednesday night's debate. It will be the first time the American people will see the two candidates side by side. Sarah Charlton looks at Romney's pre-debate campaign stop.
Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney greets crowds in Denver ahead of a critical moment in his campaign. On Wednesday night, he'll go head-to-head with Barack Obama in the first presidential debate. Romney told the crowd he looked forward to setting out his vision for America's future.
These debates are an opportunity for each of us to describe the pathway forward for America that we would choose. And the American people are going to have to make their choice as to what kind of America they want. And so I look forward to these debates. I'm delighted that we're going to have 3 debates. It'll be a conversation with the American people that will span almost an entire month. We'll get to describe our respective views. And I believe the people of Colorado will choose a better way forward for our country. We can't afford 4 more years like the last 4 years.
Romney is under pressure to perform well in the debates after a video was leaked of him describing some Americans as depending on state handouts. With just 5 weeks to go before the election, opinion polls suggest Romney is trailing Obama, who maintains a narrow lead.
In the U.S., the economy is anemic right now. Gross domestic product in the second quarter now at an annual rate of 1.3%. Meantime, the unemployment rate remains above 8%. Median income in the U.S. has dropped 3 straight years as food prices increase and gas prices hover near all-time highs. And now there are signs of inflation in the economy. Our web poll question: what is the best way to decrease unemployment and remove the economy from recession? Please go to wealthtv.com and register your answer. You'll see the web poll question on the right side of the home page. Down under in Australia, in Queensland, the search is on right now for a missing vintage plane. 6 people were on board the aircraft. Lindsay Peretti reports they are looking over hundreds of square miles of forest.
A 1934 de Havilland Dragon takes off from an Australian runway. This plane is now missing with 6 people on board. Rescuers are scanning the dense forest for signs of the antique aircraft, which was flying across Queensland, but it's slow going.
It's hilly terrain, it's also heavily wooded, so even if you flew right across the top of it, if you weren't able to look right down through the trees, you may not necessarily see anything on the ground. So it is a slow search, and they need to do it in a lot of detail to be sure that they've covered it properly.
Bad weather is hampering the search, but one helicopter pilot said there was still hope of finding survivors.
There's certainly a chance that people could still be out there, that's for sure. Because we don't have a lot of information into what state the aircraft was in when it actually got on the ground, there is still a very good chance that people could be alive. So we'll keep searching and, to the best of our ability, try and find those people.
Pilots are combing an area of 210 square miles for the rare plane and its passengers.
Also down under, there is a new sport, a new high-tech toy. It's one part jet ski and one part jet pack. Ellie Park takes a ride on the flyboard.
Behold, the flyboard, the newest water sport to hit the Australian Gold Coast with a splash. It's a combination between a jet ski and a jet pack and can launch its rider up to 10 meters or 32 feet into the air, or dive underwater like a dolphin. Invented by a Frenchman last year, the flyboard's jet ski is attached to a hose that pumps water to keep it aloft, while riders use their feet to control the direction. And according to its Australian distributor, Peter Hender, it feels natural to use.
Extension of your body, you pull that Ironman pose, stand up, and you'll freely fly around.
While it certainly looks fun, the flyboard does come with a sky-high price tag of nearly $12,000 US.
Still to come on Wealth International News, the latest from the global financial markets. Also ahead, what's turning heads at Paris Fashion Week is less about the big brands and more about the boutiques. And the tense vote count in the former Soviet bloc state of Georgia. Checking the global financial markets for Tuesday, Wall Street was mixed. The Dow down 0.25% on the day. Shares of clothing retailer Express dropped double digits. This after the company lowered its third quarter expectations. Meantime, Chrysler reported its best September sales since 2007. Overall, though, investors are cautious right now, waiting for word on a bailout for Spain and how Greece is handling its cutbacks. In Europe, a down day. In London, the FTSE off 0.1%. In Asia, Japan's Nikkei down 0.1%. China's Shanghai Composite up 1.5%. Meantime, oil now at $91 a barrel, the dollar lower against the euro, and gold at $17.76 an ounce. Now to the business of the latest in high fashion. In France, Paris Fashion Week is bringing together buyers from Asia who have a huge appetite for clothing. But Ivor Bennett reports this season, Beijing is choosing boutique over big brands.
This may be Paris Fashion Week, but it's China that's stealing the show. The country's fashion market will triple in the next decade to over $200 billion, according to a report by the Boston Consulting Group. And with sales still sinking at home, Europe's top labels are desperate to cash in. French luxury brand Thierry Mugler already has a foothold in the region, but its president Joël Pally wants more.
We have a very good partnership in Hong Kong. The company Joyce helps us with our development there and in China. We also have boutiques in Japan that like the brand. China is amongst our priorities because they're a very important market for fashion.
A growing affluent class has made China a potential gold mine, with the latest Hurun Wealth Report counting over 1 million millionaires. But retailers beware. Success is by no means guaranteed. Running costs there have risen sharply now the secret's out, and it seems Western brands can no longer rely on cachet alone to bring in the profits. Sales for luxury British brand Burberry flatlined in the last quarter, with China cited as the major contributing factor. According to Vogue China's senior fashion editor Yo-Yo Yao, Chinese tastes are changing fast, and made in Europe isn't enough.
I think that perhaps at the very beginning people were more about wanting to make a statement like, I'm wearing Dior, I'm wearing this and that label. But now it's become more refined. Women's tastes are becoming more discerning. They're now seeking unestablished labels, but with a lot of style.
Big name labels are still staking their claim in China despite Burberry's woes. But it's boutique brands that are the ones to watch. Ivor Bennett, Reuters.
Coming up next, a meeting of Arab and South American minds as Wealth International News continues. In the former Soviet bloc nation of Georgia, they are voting for a new government leadership there, and early vote counts show the opposition is leading. Sarah Charlton looks at the growing tension during this high-stakes election cycle.
Supporters celebrating the Georgian capital as initial results suggest the opposition is ahead in the country's parliamentary election. Led by billionaire tycoon Bidzina Ivanishvili, the coalition Georgian Dream claimed victory over the ruling party. Ivanishvili said he was hoping for 100 seats in parliament.
The Georgian people have shown their great culture, their great wisdom. Everything happened exactly as the people and the country needed. I think an interesting precedent happened in Georgian history today. For the first time in our long history, we have changed our government through elections.
The early results raised the prospect of a tense standoff as both main parties claimed a majority. In the town of Kashuri, scuffles erupted as armed men forced their way into 2 polling stations. Local media said tear gas and rubber bullets had been used, although the authorities denied the claims. The Election Commission said there had been no grave violations during the voting.
To South America, in Peru, it's the summit of the Arab and South American nations. The goal is to explore economic cooperation and tackle political issues. Sarah Sheffer reports upheaval in the Muslim world is also on the table.
Tunisian President Monsef Marzouki arrives in Lima, where Arab and South American leaders are meeting for a roundtable discussion on democracy. Marzouki spoke to some of the weaknesses and challenges of the Arab Spring, stressing that the pro-democracy protests in the Middle East have taken place without any particular ideology or leadership. He says the gains made by Islamic parties in the region may soon lose momentum, as these parties have little ability to govern and could easily lose votes in the next elections. Uruguayan President José Mujica defended democracy in Latin America and offered its lessons as a framework for Arab states. He said South America embraces democracy because other forms of government do not provide realistic results. Leaders attending the summit meeting joined together to watch a national Peruvian performance on Monday night. The meeting of 21 Arab and 11 South American leaders is set to conclude on Tuesday.
Coming up next, 2 handguns belonging to Bonnie and Clyde go up for auction as Wealth International News continues. Bonnie and Clyde, 80 years later, there remains a fascination over the pair of romantic criminals and their weapons. Ellie Park looks at 2 handguns used by the outlaws and what they are worth today.
2 guns, once owned by the famous outlaw couple Bonnie and Clyde, were sold at auction for over $500,000 to an anonymous buyer from Texas. A sub-nosed Colt .38 was found taped inside a thigh of Bonnie Parker, sold for $264,000 while Clyde Barrow's Colt .45, recovered from his waistband, went under the hammer for $240,000. Barrow's nephew Buddy was present at the New Hampshire auction.
I'm amazed because, I never dreamed that this stuff would sell that much interest, believe me, because when I was growing up, this was a taboo subject.
The Lovebird bandits were believed to have committed 13 murders and numerous bank robberies during the Great Depression era. Their fame was heightened by their practice of leaving glamorous photos of themselves at crime scenes. They were killed by a posse in 1934. She was 23, he was 25.
That's it for this edition of Wealth International News. Thank you for watching. I'm Graham Ledger. We'll see you again next time. Until then, good day.